the kleshas, the different struggles, the three whips of material existence. Adhyatma, klesh, which is the struggles that we have with our body and minds. Our minds give us trouble, and our bodies give us trouble in the form of disease and old age, ultimately death. Our minds give us a lot of trouble, constantly demanding satisfaction. The mind is our worst enemy or can be our best friend. And there are also these days, especially in Northern Europe and North America, I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods, but where we are, mental illness is quite common. 25% of university students are seeing psychologists these days. A lot of them are on medication, so it's become a real problem. Social media has contributed towards this sickness of the minds of the youth. So Adhyatma. And there also Srila Prabhupada explains about Adi Bhuta, or the Bhautika Klesh. The material energy attacks us, some often in the form of living entities, others who want to feast upon us, like insects, other creatures who want to take advantage of our material bodies to eat them, attack them in some way. So then you have that force, that suffering we have to endure, both internally and externally. And then we have the Adidaiva, so the demigods, the sufferings we get from the demigods, which is described to be like natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, what have you. Also pestilence and disease and so forth. Like COVID-19, you could say it was one of the, could fall into that category. You could also say COVID-19 fell into the category of Adibautika Klesh because it was a living entity after all. Also must have had very good karma if you think about it, because it became very famous very quickly. But it seems that the fame didn't last so long. So anyhow, we're getting off topic. So that's different ways of seeing these three principles: Adhyatma, Adibautik, Adidaivic. So how does that work for us? Well, we can understand that we, the experiencers of this material body, are the Adhyatmic, and we are suffering because of our identification with the body and the mind. Because we're identifying with the body and mind, therefore we suffer. The body, technically, because it's our body, we identify with it, therefore we call it Adhyatmic, but actually it's part of the Adibautic. It's part of the Adibhuta, it's part of the universal form, because it's part of the material energy, the material manifestation. For those of us who don't identify with the material body, we suffer, but we don't identify with that suffering. But the material body is subject to untold sufferings, disease and old age. So many sufferings, hitting your little toe in the corner of the door as you walk through, cutting your fingernails too short, eating too much, or not having enough to eat. All these things are forms of suffering, having to hear the nagging of another devotee. Complaining too much is also a form of suffering. There's many sufferings we have to endure. There are also pleasures, but according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, even pleasures are actually a form of suffering because they cause us to be more and more addicted to material contamination. There is technically nothing but suffering except for devotional service, pure devotional service. And then you have the demigods and how they control us. So really this chapter of Bhagavatam, the 10th chapter, is supposed to emphasize to us how our so-called independence really is dependence. that we are very much dependent. We have very little free will. We have free will, but it is very limited. It is very limited. It's there, but it's limited. The reality is anything we want to achieve in this world is a gift. If it is provided, is a gift according to our karma, according to the mercy of the Lord. And the demigods who are agents of the Lord give us those gifts. The demigods are controlling all of our senses. Every one of our senses is controlled by a presiding demigod. This chapter clearly explains that. It also explains the process by which those demigods come into being in the individual universes according to the desire of the Supreme Person, the Virat Purush, the Icha Shakti. You have the Icha Kriya Jnana Shaktis. So the Icha of Krishna, his desires bring everything into being. Through his desires, the demigods are also manifest according to the desire for the Virat Purush to experience hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing, and so forth. So the order of creation is given. The descending process of creation is provided in this chapter. Of course, in modern science, we are given a different process of creation, the ascending process of creation, whereby everything started from zero. Then from that singularity came the Big Bang. Then from that Big Bang, which happened for no reason, for no particular reason at all, out of nothing, everything came. And then from that everything, or that material existence, life spontaneously sprang, again for no reason, out of nothing. And then from that microscopic life, everything evolved gradually into the different species of life coming up through, gradually reaching to humanoid species. That's their theory. Whereas the Bhagavatam tells us, no, actually the descending process of creation, which is actually much more consistent with our experience, and much more consistent with logic and reason, explains that from the Lord's desire and from the Lord's personal form, everything has been coming down since eternity. From his desires, the material world was created, and through his desire it is again destroyed. That Mahavishnu lying on the causal ocean, breathing in and out, eternally, the material universes. It is said that each of his breath is 3/4 of a second. He breathes in and he breathes out. When he breathes out, all the universes are created. When he breathes in, they're all destroyed. That's been going on forever. But for the universes themselves, that 3/4 of a second is experienced as 311 trillion 40 billion years for us. For Lord Brahma, it's 100 years. For Lord Mahavishnu, it is 3/4 of a second. So time is relative time. Modern scientists have played around with these ideas, of course. The theory of relativity is there. Einstein spoke about that if we travel at the speed of light, time will act differently upon the person traveling as opposed to the person on Earth. And there's also the theory of the multiverse, which is of course, scientists will say this is a new theory, but as we see here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that theory is as old as time itself. It's not a new theory, it's a fact. There are unlimited universes. And also the theory they have of the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. The universe is being created and destroyed. Well, again, this is an idea that's been churned by sages without modern technology for millennia. It's quite boring, actually, if you think about it. Actually, there's nothing that scientists come up with which is of any real interest if you look at it through the eyes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Even things like aliens, UFOs, or whatever they call them these days, unidentified aerial phenomena. I think they changed it. And then they also have, telepathy or remote viewing, these phenomena which they cannot explain, healing, levitations, different phenomena which cannot be explained through material science. What to speak of consciousness itself, the very fact that consciousness is completely inexplicable through modern science. In fact, some scientists deny that it even exists because it cannot be explained through mathematical formula. Therefore, it cannot exist. So they come up with all these theories. But if we just simply, with a little faith, with a little open-mindedness, a little broad-mindedness, go back to the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, then everything is already there. We simply have to adopt these ideas, discuss them with an open mind. Don't accept things blindly like sheep, but rationally, reasonably discuss them until we come to a conclusion which represents our experience. Of course, we should doubt. Doubting is a sign of intelligence. If we don't doubt, if we accept things blindly, then that's not considered very intelligent. On the other hand, if you are a doubting Thomas, maybe some of you are familiar with him, then that's also not very good if we just doubt blindly. Even when rational arguments are provided, we still hang on to our doubts. But then that's also not very good. That's considered no longer a doubt. It's called a misgiving. Misgiving isn't a faculty of the intellect. It's a faculty of the emotion, of the mind. Emotions, you may or may not be, I think you are all very aware of the fact that emotions are not rational. Emotions can often be completely irrational and have no bearing on reality. Anyone who's married will know that. Emotions may not make any sense at all, but still we have to take them seriously. But we shouldn't hang on to grudges, to feelings, because feelings change over time. Whereas rational reality, mathematical truths, absolute truth especially, never changes. They always are permanent. So therefore, it's a firmer base of understanding. Having said that, of course, if you take it to the transcendental platform, there's no meaning to tattva. There's no meaning to truth without rasa, without relationship. There is no point to this world at all. At the same time, if you take emotion on its own strength without referring to truth, then it becomes sentimentalism and sometimes fanaticism. So therefore, both have to be understood in their proper places and how they work together in unison. So this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam is giving us the tattva. It is giving us the truth, the reality of this universe, how it was created, what is our position within it, and how we interact, how we interface with this universe, and through that material universe, how we can interface with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How through that interface, we can develop love for him, how we can perceive him, his presence, his will through that universe, how the universe is operating, how the demigods are operating. We can perceive the will of the Lord, his icha, his desires. If we come in line with those desires, if we engage our material, mechanical, robotic bodies according to the guidelines of the scriptures, in the service of the Lord, then the universe reacts to us in a different way. Our experience of reality changes. Instead of a life of struggle and a life of misery, it becomes a life of joy, a life of upliftment, a life of consciousness beyond the temporary boundaries of family, nation, race, religion, um, identification with human species, identification with so many things. We can go beyond all of that to identifying ourselves as eternal servants of the Lord, a true brotherhood across not only this galaxy, this universe, but across all universes, across all the cosmic manifestation, both material and spiritual, true oneness. One love, one people, one voice, one religion, one mantra, one love. Real one love is the love of Krishna, love of the Supreme Personality of God. That unity can only be experienced when people have knowledge of who we are, why we are here, why we are in this position, what is my relationship with this universe, how do I conduct myself within this universe, what is my duty, and how ultimately do I achieve the ultimate goal of life and be free from the repeated cycle of birth and death. So those are some ideas I gleaned from this tiny little purport that I was given. But to be honest, I mean, I'm tired of my own voice. I'd much rather hear from all of you. I'd much rather hear from you, your questions or your reflections that you have on this topic or anything that I've said, and to get to know you a bit more. That would be my personal desire. So if you will, I would like to hand over the floor to you and see what any of you would like to ask or anything you would like to say. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Your Grace, DOYAL MORA Prabhu. That was a very interesting presentation of the Srimad Bhagavatam text we just read. And devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations, you may want to ask or share. As usual, you may indicate by using the hand emoji, a physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question or to speak. Prabhuji, the text itself states that the loving entity is able to do whatever. First of all, if the Virat Purusha agitates the loving entity. So that is creating some sort of understanding in me that all things that the loving entity is able to do is as a result of the Virat Purusha agitating the loving entity to do that particular act. That is why the loving entity is, like I'm speaking now, so the Virat Purusha agitated that ability in me, and therefore I'm able to speak. So my question is, why does the Virat Purusha cause others or agitate others to have the ability to do some things, while others are not being agitated by the Virat Purusha to do some things? Like Prabhupada was saying in the paper that this applies to all sense organs. So why does the Virat Purusha agitates my eyes to see and does not agitate someone else's eyes to see? Some people are born blind. How come about this? I wouldn't say partiality, but these differences, if you may help in this regard.
Thank you for the question, Sahadev Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I'm sure you know the answer better than me, but for my
No,
own
I don't
purification,
know. I want to know.
for my own purification, I will attempt to repeat what I've heard from greater persons than myself. So the Vedic or the Srimad Bhagavatam version, the explanation for this phenomena that in this world we see that it seems that sometimes the demigods have switched on a person's capacity to do certain activities, and for another person it is switched off. You gave the example of a person having sight and another person doesn't have sight. But again, that could be extended to anything. If one person can be able to walk, another person is lame. One person can have an incredible capacity to sing very loudly and very much in tune, and another person's voice is very painful for others to hear. Why is that? Why have the demigods been so cruel? To one person, so kind to another. And this is a great mystery which the Abrahamic religious traditions have always struggled with very greatly in their understanding of the mercy of the Lord, because it seems, at least externally, that the Virat Purush, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very cruel. Otherwise, how can he make a child blind or diseased and so forth? And this is also, just to point out, a very sensitive topic, because one of the failings of modern philosophy is the ability of individuals to accept accountability for our situations. It's a very painful topic because everybody has to really, Vaishnavism is the philosophy which makes us responsible, completely responsible, not only for our own position and situation, but responsible for the sufferings of every other living being in the creation. The Vaishnava feels that level of responsibility. When he sees another person suffering, he feels what I should have done better to make this world a better place, so that that person wouldn't be suffering now. I didn't preach enough. I didn't give enough kindness. I didn't give enough charity. I didn't do enough. That's how he feels. That's how the Vaishnava feels. And he also, because of that broad-heartedness, he doesn't have a problem accepting the responsibility for his own miserable condition. If he's very poor, if he's got a bodily deformation, if he was born in a poor country, if he was whatever it may be, he feels that he's okay with that because that's his karma. It's his karmic debt. We are born with debts. It's said in the Bhagavatam, we are born with debts to the great sages. We are born with debts to the forefathers. We are born with debts to our parents. We are born with debts to the earth. We are born with so many debts to repay for all of the gifts we've been given. We've been given by our parents this body. We owe a debt to our parents. We've been given knowledge from the sages. We owe a debt to the sages, to our teachers. We owe debts to Mother Earth for providing us with so many foodstuffs. We have debts to the sun. We don't pay the bill to the sun. The sun is free. We have debts. So that karmic debt has to be repaid. If we don't pay our bills, we get letters in the post, many letters in big red writing, pay this immediately, otherwise we're going to give this over to a collection agency, and then you get some big guys knocking on your door, nicking all your stuff, and then if you continue not to pay, then you end up in jail and you get punished, right? So punishment comes to those who don't pay their debts. In this life, we have a duty to pay our debts, and it's said by being a devotee and preaching the word of Lord Chaitanya, all of our debts are immediately repaid. But in previous lifetimes, perhaps we didn't pay our debts. We were. Maybe even in this life, before becoming a devotee, we were not paying our debts. In previous lifetimes, we were not paying our debts. So in this lifetime, we had to suffer some karmic reaction. But we accept responsibility for that. So the demigods really are adjudicators, ultimately working as limbs of the Lord, as the Virat Purush. They decide according to our karma, so our deserts and our desires, what it is we become qualified for in this life. It is said in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 9, that the living entity takes another gross body and obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. And thus he enjoys a particular sense, a set of sense objects. So according to our karma in our previous life, whatever our consciousness was, we deserve a type of nose, a type of eye, a type of skin and sense of touch, which corresponds to the consciousness we had in our previous life. And we have to become satisfied with that arrangement and engage it in what it should have been engaged in the first place, in pure devotional service, to the point we become completely detached and from our material bodies, and we no longer have to accept these miserable material bodies. And instead we get a spiritual body and a spiritual atmosphere, and we can engage in divine loving service eternally. So everybody's suffering. Everybody has their own individual hell. Nobody is free from it. Even multi-billionaires suffer terribly. We have a multi-billionaire that comes to our temple, and his son committed suicide. Everybody's suffering the same things. Nobody gets away with it if you don't pay our debts. So that would be some kind of explanation. Sahadev Guru.
Well, thank you so much, Dago Moropopo. I truly appreciated the answer because it's, with my limited mind and understanding, it makes a lot of sense to me and helps clear some of the doubts I had prior to asking the question. Listening to how you speak, I can deduce that you are very competent preacher, especially speaking, sharing Krishna Katha with non-devotees. There are many of us who are trying to be devotees, but we are unable to speak to non-devotees. But I can deduce from the way you speak, the way you deliver your words, that you are a very efficient preacher. Efficient in the sense that you know how to present Krishna consciousness to non-devotees in such a way that even though it is not watered down, that you package it in a way that people can easily accept. So may Shri Guru and Krishna continue to bless your devotion. And if anyone has any question, comments, please, you may unmute and go ahead and then ask or speak.
Just like to add, I'm actually quite incompetent in general. And it's very kind of you to say that, and thank you for encouraging me. And I totally accept your blessings. I need them.
Hare Krishna. I wish I had the blessings. I will bless you all the more to do more for Guru and Krishna and for the world. But thank you. Maybe someday some of us may visit you in Soho. I understand our revered speaker is the temple president of the Soho Temple. So London has visited us today. Kusha Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Okay, Hare Krishna Prabhu, obeisances. I have a question on the purport. Prabhupada mentioned that the desire for all kinds of sense perceptions and sense organs exist in the Supreme Lord. And thus they take place also in the individual people. So if the desires that we have are also in God, because everything we have come from Krishna, right? Both the power, the beauty, everything he does, we have minute particle of them. So if the desire, the way we think, comes from Krishna also, why are we being told to kill our material desires? Because desire comes from Krishna. If we don't desire, means we are like competing with Krishna. We want to be Krishna, so we must have something to desire. We didn't put the desire in our mind, in our heart. It originated from Krishna. And we cannot think like Krishna. Thinking like Krishna means we are competing with God. Do you get my question?
I understand your question.
Like, if we want to say a man wants to marry 16,108 wives, he wants to compete with Krishna, which he cannot be able to do. So I cannot think like Krishna because I don't want to be God. I don't want to compete with Krishna, but I must think of something.
Yes. Yes. Very good point. So let's see. So the principle of desire. It's important to separate the principle of desire from our individual desires. That the principle of desire, the fact that we desire, is inherent. It's part of the inherent nature of the Adhyatma, the self. We desire. That's just what we do. It cannot be killed, actually. It's impossible. That's what is the weakness of Buddhism, is that their idea is that to kill all desire, one reaches nirvana, but wanting to reach nirvana is a desire in itself. So it's impossible to actually have no desires. But what is the meaning is that we need to adjust the quality of our desires from selfish desires to selfless desires, from material independence to transcendental independence. We should be independently thoughtful, but our thought should be independently connected to the supreme independent person, Krishna. If you look at the most independent person in the Bhagavatam, you would have to say, apart from Krishna, that it's Narada Muni. He can go anywhere, he can do anything, but we see that he only ever conducts himself in such a way that pleases the Lord. Therefore, he is given unlimited freedom. Because our desires are, while we're in the material state of mind, our desires are not to please the Lord, they're to please ourselves. Therefore, our freedoms have been taken away. We have been locked into a prison of this globe. And although we're really trying to escape this globe using rocket machines and so forth, it's proving quite difficult to get out even of this planet. What to speak of this solar system, what to speak of this universe. We're actually trapped here in this prison. It's a big prison, but it's still a prison. Until we give up this selfishness, wanting to have 16,108 wives would not be helpful in our development of Krishna consciousness. Krishna can do that as an exhibition of his opulences, but we cannot do that. Our material desires are desires which satisfy our selfish nature, but if we change the quality of our desires to desires which satisfy the Lord, not only do we achieve our material happiness, but we achieve our transcendental happiness by Krishna becoming happy. Take, for example, one wants to have a career in medicine and become a doctor. So that's a material desire because I want to become a doctor, I want to have a career, I want money, therefore I can have family and so forth. So one can achieve those things, strive for those material goals and achieve them in this life, but it doesn't help one achieve perfection in going back to Godhead, not at all. But if one, as a service to Krishna, becomes a doctor so that he can heal the devotees, and through his healing hands, create preaching opportunities to reach out to the hearts of the non-believers to bring them closer to Krishna's lotus feet. If he uses his doctoral practice to preach, but also the money he receives from his practice to raise a Krishna-conscious family, to look after his deities, to support the temple and so forth, every one of his activities has been transcendentalized, Krishnized. So by doing the same action, the same activity, by engaging his material desires in Krishna's service, the same desire, but Krishnized, everything becomes complete. So it's not that we kill our material desires. No, we simply engage them in Krishna's service. By engaging them, we purify them. We connect them to Krishna's desires because his Icha, his desires, are explained elaborately in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the other scriptures. We simply have to follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures. And that comes in line with Krishna's desires. And then the principle of desire is satisfied in us and in him. And then everything is groovy. But if we try to satisfy our desires separately from the Lord, then everything is terrible. That would be my understanding.
I have second question in continuation of this your answer. When a child is born, is conceived in the womb of the mother, from this verse, there's predestination, right? There is something the child is destined to be in life before he or she is born. And Krishna knows what the child is coming to do on earth. That's why he took birth, either good or bad. Then how do you differentiate destiny and desire?
So the eternal conundrum of how do you reconcile free will or desire with destiny is something, again, which many other religious systems are completely unable to deal with. But it's actually quite easy to understand if we understand it through the purports of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, in the sense that we do have a material destiny. That's a fact. Astrologically, it can even be predicted what will happen to us in this life, right? At the same time, we have free will to decide, are we going to accept Krishna consciousness in this life or not? That's something beyond the material world. That's beyond the demigods' control. They can't dictate to you whether or not you're going to be a devotee. And once you become a devotee, they actually don't have control over you anymore. Krishna takes control. Krishna karma. You always have that free will that can never be taken away. So there's always a synthesis between destiny and free will for the devotee. But for the non-devotee, it's their destiny is set. It's going to happen. The only thing that they can actually choose is how that manifests. For example, you're going to lose $10,000, this year. It's going to happen. It's in the stars. But you can decide if somebody robs you and hurts you, or if you give it in charity. That's your free will. So you always have free will, but your destiny is fixed materially. How it happens, that's up to you. And your spiritual destiny is completely independent from any material considerations at all. And that's how Prabhupada explains it. Does that make sense? So the example he gives is the aeroplane. You buy a ticket to Bombay, you get on the aeroplane, you've made your decision, your destiny is set. Maybe you made that decision previously, even in a past life. But while you're on the aeroplane, you've still got a whole bunch of things you could do or not do. Your free will is still operating on the journey, and that will dictate the experience of that journey. And it will dictate your consciousness when you arrive at the destination, how you will deal when you arrive there. So all these things are available to us. So it's how we act. Our attitudes in life are more important than the mechanical reaction of the material nature according to our past deeds. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Krishna Prabhu, for those questions, and DOYAL MORA Prabhu for the beautiful answers. Anyone else with something to ask before Prabhuji leaves? I realize that we sometimes, not like we deliberately create such confusions, but those in UK sometimes get the timing confused because sometimes GMT and the London time are the same, other times they are not the same. So, and just yesterday also, the way we do our dating system, we follow the British system. The day comes, and then the month follows, and then the year follows. Whereas in the States, the month comes first, and then the day comes second, and the year comes third. So these differences sometimes create confusion. So we sincerely apologize for making you think that the class was going to start an hour earlier.
Well, that's not your fault. Actually, it's true.
Yeah.
Because it says here GMT 3 p.m. It doesn't say UK.
Yeah.
3 p.m. So what I should have done is calculated according, because it's the summertime here and the hours it goes 1 hour ahead.
Yeah.
So I apologize from
no,
my side.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. See, Prabhu, you repeated it, and I repeat it. I say it. Many devotees say it. We all say it as devotees that most of our suffering, if not all of our suffering, is due to the identification of the body and the mind. I'm suffering because I'm seeing my body as myself. And we see, at least I have lived quite a long time to come close to quite a number of lunatics, those who are completely mad. They have no conception of their bodies. They have no conceptions of their minds. Yet, they are not any better. In fact, they probably are suffering much more than me, who identify with the body and the mind. So what do we really mean when we say that we are suffering because of identification of the body and the mind, when there are many others who do not identify with the body and the mind, yet they are suffering, even though they may not think they are suffering, but they are suffering?
It's an interesting point. Because we know Shakespeare said that the lunatic, the lover, and the poet all behave in exactly the same way. So you could say the lunatic, the devotee, and the poet. Our behavior can seem completely incomprehensible sometimes, and so people may mistake us as lunatics. Particularly in the Vedic tradition, you have, of course, the avadut principle, where it's expected that the behavior would be completely irrational in accordance to social norms.
Yeah.
So for the devotee, he behaves like a lunatic because He's not identifying with his material body. Therefore, you see on Harinam devotees doing outrageous things, which for the public would seem mad. But the devotee is in ecstasy and couldn't care less what the public think at that moment. So the madman doesn't care what anybody thinks, but that's not because of them being detached from the body and the mind. They have become so self-absorbed, they've become so much in their own mind that they live only within their mind and they've forgotten about reality. The same thing happens in drug abuse when people take too many drugs, and often people who take too many hallucinogenic drugs become mad. The reason being because drugs make you so self-absorbed. All you can think about is your own feelings, your own experience, and your own visions. And others, although you feel a kindred amongst them, but you're not going to do anything to help them. In fact, you see that drug dealers are the most vicious, violent, and cruel people on this planet. Intoxication is the worst. So to make one completely self-absorbed. So one becomes so absorbed, not in the perhaps body, but in the mind. And the mind, not connected to Krishna, is a madman. The mind is mad. What is the definition of madness? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. And I don't know what is the point of any of this. Yeah, that's right. Because a person who hasn't got Krishna doesn't know who they are. They don't know where they're going. Why are they here? What is the aim of my life? So therefore, anyone who's not a devotee technically is a madman. But the maddest madman, the lunatic, biggest lunatic of all, is that person who, unfortunately, due to some sinful activity or due to gross ignorance, association with the mode of ignorance leads to madness. So whether that was in a past life, and therefore in this life they have to, because they wanted to be in ignorance, in this life they are born in ignorance. Or whether it's because they've interacted with ignorance in this life due to complete self-absorption, or just not caring about anything anymore. I just don't give a whatever. These things lead to madness. And so we have to be very careful. Although the two look the same, the three, the lover, the devotee, the poet, and the lunatic look the same externally. They're very different in how their minds work. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. That reminds me of a statement Kirtananda Maharaj made some time ago. He says, we as aspiring devotees, when we look at the karmis who are not taken to Krishna consciousness, we think they're crazy. And the karmis who are not ready to take to Krishna consciousness, they also look at devotees, look at the way devotees live their lives. They also say, these people are crazy. So we say crazy to each other, but at the end of the day, one will be proven crazy, and the other one will be proven just a lover of God. So we hope that we can be mad for Krishna. We do not care being mad for Krishna. Arichakra Prabhu, please you may unmute. Yes, more Prabhu, you have something to say. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. So just one point. I will have to check out very soon. But who did you say said that? Who did you say made that statement?
Kirtananda Maharaj.
Yeah, because he actually was completely mad and a devotee. So that also is possible.
Arichakra Prabhu, you may unmute. So looks like probably this may be the last question.
Yes,
so we
yes.
may be able to leave for today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandava Pranam. Thank you very much for the, like Sardin said, the way you explain, you make things so simple to understand. So, thank you for that. My question is, in your in your speech, you said somewhere how we always identify with different, things. Like we identify with race, we identify with species, we identify with all these things. And it's all are part of the material consciousness. So my question is, if we don't identify with species, how can we even preach? Because if I grab book and I want to even go out to preach, definitely I identify myself as a part of as a human being, and I'm going out there to preach to human beings. I won't grab books and go there and try to speak to animals or try to speak to cats and dogs. So somehow or the other, I will have to identify with the species that I'm in. Other than that, how would I even live my life if I don't identify with the species? So can you use your way of explaining things, making things so simple, to explain this to me?
I'll try my best. This is a very good question. Thank you so much. Really nice. So yeah, the idea is like, so we're in a human body, right? Okay, so then we use it. We use it or lose it. So utilize what you've got and utilize it for what it can be used for. So a human form of life would be better to preach to humans, right? Perhaps if I was in another form of life and I was Krishna conscious, I would preach to those life forms. Krishna takes birth in every species of life, so that technically shouldn't be a problem. Of course, that's true, but the main what I'm trying to get across, I guess, the point is that we have to communicate in such a way that the individual that we're interfacing with can understand what we're saying and can get the message. So if it's a human being, then we deal with him on a human platform. But just as a point, we should also feel great compassion for all species of life too. And we should also want to give them Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the Hari Nam should be chanted for all life. When we're out on our japa walks, we should chant loudly so the trees and other insects can also benefit and also get pure devotional service. We should care about them. We should also understand that Lord Chaitanya converted elephants, lions, tigers, deers, and snakes into devotees and got them to dance and chant in the kirtan. Of course, we're not Lord Chaitanya. We can't do that stuff, but it's possible. It's possible to also preach to the animals, depending upon our capacity. So we perhaps don't have the capacity. We can only preach within our psychophysical limitations. But for the person who has transcended those limitations and no longer identifies with the body at all, they can speak to the animals. I mean, there you got Francis of Assisi used to preach to the animals. Krishna had all the languages of all the animals at his command. He can speak to all of them. There's records of Prabhupada also preaching to the monkeys in Vrindavan and so forth. So it's not limited. It's unlimited. We're only limited by our identification with this body. But as long as we have that limited identification with the body, then the best thing for us to do is to use that facility in the maximum that we can and wait for realizations to come. So that would be my response in brief. And you know what? I really like this group so much, and I can see other hands, and I want you guys to invite me back real soon because I feel really bad that I could only give this small amount of time. Yes. But I have another really important meeting because I really just the way it is. But please, I beg you to invite me back again soon.
No. We are just simply so much honored and pleased to hear you wanting to revisit us and share your love with us. So Prabhuji has another important meeting he needs to attend to. So we apologize to devotees who might have had some questions or things to be cleared. Prabhuji might not be able to do it today, but hopefully by Guru Krishna's grace, we're going to have him here again in the very nearest possible time, and we may continue our discussion. With that being said, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Dal Moro Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us today. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram,
Rama
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Pancha Kalpa Taribhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya
Vya eva
Pitanam
cha
Pavanabhyo Vaishnavibhyo
Pavanabhevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo
Anantapati Vaishnavrinda
Namaha.
Ki Jai.
Jai
Praise Dal Mora Prabhu
Krishna
Ki
Thakur
Jai.
ki Jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.